The we're learning about the concept of sirtut, that when you write a pasuk, you have to do sirtut. The last thing we learned was a story about Marukva and Geneva, but the purpose of the story was as to that the idea of sirtut. You're quoting a pasuk, trying to learn something from that pasuk. Like Rabbein Tam says, and you have to be besarted it. You have to make this line. If it's at least 2 words, which is actually the halach, even though the Brisa says a minimum, of 4 words. We said at least 3 words. Okay, we are up to the Gemara here. Sholchu Leila Marukva, about 20 lines from the top of the page. So since we're talking about Marukva, so they asked Marukva a question. Zimra minolan the asa. How you know you're not allowed to sing b'chlal? Now, if you remember the very end of Saita, we learned about that after the Asmosionas came and everything else, they stopped singing. But here they want to ask Zimra minolan the asa, and Rashi and Taisus over here. Something that's different, but Rashi says this is talking about the base hamishtois, talking about with his party and his levity and frivolity, not stop. But the Gemara Seita doesn't seem so. Rambam, however, turns it into just singing generally because he says he doesn't limit it to base hamishtois. And also Rashi and Taisus talking about only if you're drinking wine at the time. So Sholchu Leila Mar Ukva Zimra Menoland Asa. How do you know that singing is Asa? Sirt, again, so there's 2 reasons why I bring it, because first of all, it's Marukva, we just spoke about Marukva, and also the idea of Sirt. There in the previous story, he was on the receiving end. Here, he was the one who was actually doing the Sirt. The Kosovo, he wrote this pasuk. Al Tismach Yisrael El Gil Ko'amim. Don't rejoice just like Goyim rejoice. Don't rejoice just like Goyim rejoice. And again, Rashi says talking about in the taverns. The Lishla Mahacha, why don't you bring this other pasuk which says Bashir lo yishtu yain, the singing, you should not drink wine, Yemar, bitter sheichel of the wine to those who drink it. And that pasuk clearly says you shouldn't sing. Only with musical instruments. Abub the Puma, but singing vocally shadi kamashlam, that it's also forbidden. But again, according to Rashi, it's all limited to base on mishtais. According to the Rambam, the way the Torah understands, there's a difference whether it's a musical instrument, it's usher everywhere. Singing is only usher over wine. And but the Rambam clearly says if you're doing it, to Mishabech, the Eibishter, then you're permitted. And we've discussed all of these different opinions last time. It wasn't that long ago. So Huna said to Ravashi, what it says. Now this follows on the previous Gemara because we spoke about if somebody is really giving you a very difficult time, you just keep quiet. Remember, Doim Hashem is Chayla. You be quiet, Abish will take care of them. So now we have a similar concept. Rav Huna Barnaz said to Ravashi, it says a passage when they split Israel and it named a number of cities. It says over there a number that is called Kina Dimoina. We have a city called Trey Dimoina, and Ba'ad Oda. Those 3 cities. Amalei. Masavosa the Eretz Yisrael. These are cities of Eretz Yisrael. So he said to him, Ravash Bar Nosson says Ravash, don't think I know that this is Eretz Yisrael. I want to know what they signify. Rav Gvia Magiza Amar Botaima. Rav Gvia from Magiza actually gave some deeper meaning to it, and that is the word kina is kol sheyesh lekina chaved. If you have any anger, a tinge of anger on your friend. And Rashi says, kina is an anger. Not why are you angry? Because you were provoked. The person, bothered you, so you harassed you, so you're provoked. It's a different kind of anger. It wasn't your own initiative. This is a provocation. So kol sheyesh lekina chaved. But daimim, the next city is called Dimoina, and you're quiet. Then the next city, which is called Adada, then Sheichen Ade Ad. The Eibishter who lives forever, Oiseladin will handle it, take care of it. You don't do anything. You don't have to seek revenge or anything else. You should always be from the loving, not the Irvin, and so on. Amalei, so Rashi said back to him, okay, stop playing around with words. Okay, what about the next city? Tell me about the next city cities. Vitziklago, Midmona, Visansana. Tell me about those 3 cities. What does that mean? Achinami. Give me some drasha there. Amalei, so Rav Huna said to him, you're asking me, I don't know. This person of Gvia who knows how to dash from the psukim, I'm sure every time he would have told you something over here as well. So Rabbi Acha, I'll tell you a pshat. And this against the same theme. If you have kindness, you have recriminations against your friend because he's competing with you and taking away your parnasa, legima is food, taking away your food from you, your parnasa. right? And the next city is Madmana. The Daimim, and you're quiet. You don't say anything about it. You rely on the Eibush because we had more humor there that nobody can take away someone else's parnasa. But still, the guy is is bothering you. Then, but the Sansan is Shoichin B'Sneh Oisledin. Eibush, the rest of the Sneh will take care of it. Okay, ladies yes. Yeah. No, I mean pashtus, but this is a continuation more before we said that you keep quiet, the Eibush will handle the rest. The said to Rav Huna, Kalila Menolandas, and now we're talking about singing. So let's talk about Kalila. If you remember, that's a thing that they put around the head, his wreath, that was made out of gold and silver, and they used to paint it with sulfur and salt. Oh, and they had another kind that made out of roses and hadassim, myrtles. Talking about when we learned in the mission, the site, the very last mission of Pumush Laspasianis, when Aspasianis came with his battalions, Gozru al Toras Chasanim, they then decreed that the Chasanim, this is the beginning of the destruction of Yisrael, so they go Goizer, the crowns the Chasanim used to wear by weddings, Va'al Ha'irus, and also on this musical instrument called Irus. This was a discussion that was there between the Reish Galus and Rav Huna. Okay, in the meantime, Rav Huna went out to the bathroom. Omer Chizda said, "Let me tell you something." He said, "The Rabbanan, I have a pasuk, and the pasuk is as follows: Koi Omar Hashem. Hashem said, Hased hamitznefes. Yechezkel is giving a go there. Hased hamitznefes. Remove the hat from the kohen and v'harem or Torah, and remove the crown." And he's, even though talking about Tzidkiyahu, this is going to happen, the end of the destruction, that will be no longer based on Migdash, but Kohanim will no longer serve, Kohen God will no longer serve, and nor will there be a king and monarch anymore, Tzidkiyahu, but he dashes, Harim HaTorah is the crown of the Chasanim. Zois, this, Loi Zois, not this, that Hashvola, Hagbeya, the lifted, what means the downtrodden, the Hagvoya, and those that were up there in the higher echelons, they've lowered. What is Mitznefes, which is about Kohen to do with that Torah, which is the crown? When the Mitznef is on the head of the Kohen Gadol, the crown is on the head of every person. The Stalka Mitznef is Kohen Gadol when the Kohen Gadol no longer has a Mitznef. No, he's not serious in English. The Stalka Atorah Merosh Koladam. Then the Chasanim, even Koladam, Chasanim don't wear anymore. So Taisha and other Rishonim want to bring it out from here that the hat that the Kohen Gadol wore, which is called Mitznefis, and the Migbois, which is the hat that wore by Kohen Hedjed, are two different hats. Because it's the same hat, the puzzle Mitznefis. Why do you say Kohen Gadol? Say Kohenim. They stopped serving the base of English. Is that it's a different size? And why should it be a different size? Because the Kohen Gadol wore it sits. So therefore his hat had to be smaller. And others disagree, they say it's the same size. But Taisha is a fascinating thing here. I'll read you the last line of Taisha.
It's a different shape. Because it's like a turban.
Yeah, but
I think the Kohen Gadol's way is a different shape so that it can fit the tzitz there.
That's the machlekes. It's a different thing. Okay, look at the last line. Taisha says here. Taisha, that he disagrees. He said Mitznefik boy is the same thing, but then he said, okay, so why do you say Kohen Gadol? If Mitznefik boy is anything, why conclude the Kohen Gadol? Look at the last line. You always hear that a chassan is b'nei melech, right? Because like a king, you need an escort. Look what Taisha says here. Last line. Even if you tell me the hat was the same, whether you're a Kohen Hedjed or Kohen Gadol, so Nokat Hachabaresh Kohen Gadol. So why is it going to say when the Mitznefis is taken away? Fisha Asur El Chasanim. Who would, it's not a person wears doesn't mean anything. It's only when a chassan wears it because it creates so much simcha. We want to temper that simcha. Kedem Efarish, like it says, Ke'ein Kohen Gadol. A chassan is just like a Kohen Gadol. A chassan is like a Kohen Gadol. What's the chesed again? You can find it. Shehu roish v'sar beYisrael, and because a kohen is a roish v'sar by Yisrael, a kohen gadol is a roish v'sar by Yisrael, and a chassan is compared to a kohen gadol. Have you heard that comparison before? That a chassan compared to a kohen gadol? Yeah. The chassan is ke'ein kohen gadol. Gives you a whole new, gives our bottom a whole new format, a platform for drushes. That's right. Exactly. Forget about Melech. Kohen Gadol.
Special.
Okay, maybe. Yes, Rav Lieber. Yes.
We'll put that one down in the book of sermons.
Okay. Anyway, fascinating. But let me just tell you what happened further. So Rabbi Huna went out to the bathroom. Rabbi Chizda said his bracha. This drasha. The Hachi Asher when he came back and heard this discussion, he heard him. Ashkin Avayase, he heard what he said. I'm right. It's not no pasuk. It's only Rabbanon. And that because you're quoting is Kabbalah. Remember, Dibra Kabbalah is could be Dibra Taita. Ela Chizda Shimcha v'Chazdoi Milach. He said a nice thing. It's very nice. Now you have to understand how great this is. What happened here? We're going to have more about Metzia in the end of Metzias, where Rav Chizda turned around to Rav Huna, and Rav Chizda tell me. Talk to them about Gemara Avedis, Rabbi Avedis. If your Rebbe lost something, your father lost something, So he said to him, he said, he said to him, a rabbi who needs his student's help. What's it then? Rav shetzarich talmidei. And Rav Huna understood he was asking about himself. That Rav Huna, the great Rav Huna, needs Rav Chizda. He got so angry they didn't talk to each other 40 years. Rav Chizda left the Gemara, left the base of Medrash, and didn't come back for 40 years. Rav Chizda did live a long life. We had him where was here? He lived a long life, but 40 years didn't see each other. This suddenly was a chance. As soon as this happened, Rav Huna walked away. He didn't, he had to go to the bathroom all of a sudden. He walked away because he didn't want to hear the Chizda. But then he came back because the Reish Gusa was there. He had to come back. And yet, after 40 years, he said a nice thing about him. He said, Chizda Shimcha v'Chazdoi Milach. So even when they, whatever they're standing up for the covenant of Torah, it's never personal. Never personal. If they have a machal, whatever it is, and that's a brilliance here of this Gemara. That's what's going on over there. Ashkel Mabarabashi never got to don't find that he was weaving over here a kalila, this wreath for his daughter. What about this pasuk? Interesting. Mocked or said it's wrong, and yet the Gemara keeps on quoting this pasuk. At the Hasar Mitznefes and the Hare Mo'atar, lift it up. Amalei, do me the Kohen Gadol. We're talking about a Kohen Gadol. Big Gavri, only men can be Kohen Gadol, not women. So it's never Eastern on women. Now this is very different. So with the Korah of Huna, it would seem there's no difference in male or female. Because Rav Chizda learned it from a pasuk or made a smach to a pasuk, the din is different. Because we're comparing the Kohen Gadol, which is only shaykh to men. So actually, it seems like there's a little bit of a machlekes here. It's not stam, a pasuk versus this, and that's why Rav Huna came back to argue with him. Because in other words, what do you care? So he said a pasuk. Rav Huna is trying to say there's a nafkamin halacha. According to me, women are also as well, but yet they followed Rav Chizda. Yidashin. My zois loy zois. This, not this. Sometimes it's this way. So when Abishah said, so this is what you're giving to the Eden. The Eden who not so long ago said Nas and This is how you pay them back. Look at the suffering. No, I'm giving it too. You can put a comma between the loy and zois. Others say you put a comma after zois. But it's easy to read. Loy, no. Zois, what this is happening for? She Yisro, she's Pilus Agway with the shuffle. That was Amo. Today, they took the Abish and they lowered him, and they took all these people who are nobodies and they lifted them up and elevated them. Furthermore, they put Avodah Zarah in the base of Mikdash. Now that we mentioned Bavida, that sometimes we had a number of times in Shas where Bavida said sometimes Labasi. Now, every time Bavida said something, he couldn't remember who said it. Amir Labasi, and they they both said it. So therefore, he gives them both credit. Might have seen, but it says in the pasuk, totally unrelated to before, but just the fact that he said in their name, it says the pasuk, Amar Hashem said, Im Shleimim, and normally Shleimim we say means complete, right? We always say Shalom whole. Rashi says over here, the Shleimim is you have just enough to pass, to pass by. That's all you have. And especially if you have more than enough. Nevertheless, what should you do? You should cut off part of what you have, give to tzedakah, and I will no longer punish. Give you a hard time. Even if a person sees that he has just enough, so the word shalom usually we say means complete. Suddenly shalom is like a negative connotation. You have just enough. Yasim and tzedakah. Even so, give tzedakah. If you have more than enough to live on. I mean, cut off of Allah. If you do that, you'll be saved from Gehenna. How do I know that? Mashal, interesting mashal. You have two sheep. And that's why they tell you use the word negoizu, which is usually a word we use for shearing sheep. You have two sheep. Shahaya over the mind, we're crossing the border. Achaz Gezuza, one was completely shorn off. The Achaz ain't the one still had it here. Gezuza, the one is completely shorn, has no extra weight, doesn't get struck from the border. Over, look past the border. I think the one past the border. Then the pasuk says, he says, that all this pain that you have, it won't continue. Even a poor man who's receiving tzedakah, yased tzedakah, has a mechi of tzedakah. We have one more that you have to give tzedakah a third of a shekel. Even a poor person has to give. So a person who finds it hard to give tzedakah and gives, he will no longer be impoverished. The Eibusher will reward him here in this world. Rabbi Yehuda says, Merekim the Mizrach. Let's go back to the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rekim is the eastern, outside the eastern boundary of Eretz Yisrael, and then you go, east. It's all Chutz La'aretz. We had before, except the bubble. Remember the Aku. So it says Aku is L'tzafim, right? So it comes out from me that Aku is it's fine. It's no kaim. It's out to me that Aku is the most northern point. But I mean, as a question. It says if you were traveling from Aku further north to Ksiv, the road on your right, it's the east, is all Tamik with Mishum Eretz Amim. So in other words, there's a point further north than Aku. The point is Ksiv, further north. And it's the right also because Eretz Amim. Remember before there's Exeda Eretz Amim because they didn't mark off all the graves. So we treat the entire Eretz Amim as Tamid. We had a machlekes whether it's the Avir of Eretz Amim or just the ground, the offer of Eretz Amim. Upturim and a mice when you put it from mice and Shemitah because it's considered Chutz La'aretz. Unless you know for a fact, because sometimes the boundary is not a straight line. It goes out. It's concave, convex. It continues moving around. It's very fluid. Shechayeves, unless you know for a fact that is part of Eretz Yisrael. Miss Moiloi, on the western side of that road, the Maidiv, the west, Haderech Tahira, that's Eretz Yisrael. You could automatically assume that on the left of Eretz Yisrael, the Chayev of the Ma'aser Shvis, Ad Shivad Lo Shivtura, until you know for a fact that it's not really part of Yisrael. Ad Heichen, Ad Kaziv, until we were talking about Kaziv. So Kaziv is the most northern point of Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Shmuel, but Rabbi Yosef, Ad Lavlavoy, some other city called Lavlavoy, wherever that is, further north. So the question is, how can the Mishnah say that Aku is outside Eretz already and suffering from that? When we see clearly, you go further suffering and you have Ksiv. Omar Abai says that Tsuya Nafka is a thin strip that goes from Aku. Aku is part of Eretz Yisrael. Then there's a thin strip that goes up, continues from Aku upwards. We go, sorry, and our Mishnah is talking about the bulk, the bulk of Eretz Yisrael. But if you look at Rashi here, you have a little bit of, so you have like Aku, right there's the northern point, so I'll turn the thing around. Okay, exactly. Then we said the trace remembers half and half, and then you have a strip that goes to Gaziv. And our Mishnah is talking about Eretz Yisrael, primarily the mainland, not just a little strip. Says the Gemara.
This was started with the discussion of 110 that was in the protrusion of
that was before. That was Belezer, yeah. So the Gemara, but this is Rabbi Yehuda came along and gave the marked, all the sides of Eretz Yisrael, what the boundaries are. Says the Gemara. The Yoyev Tana Simona Hachi with the Tana. If all it is one little pasta, one little strip, would the Tana even mention it to give us a simon, where Eretz Yisrael goes to a strip to Ksiv, talk about Ksiv? The one says, this is how Rashi learns tastes a little different. This is how Rashi. Yes, I'll show you from a pasuk. The Ksiv it says, he said to them, Hinechag Hashem b'Shilai. There's a Yom Tov in Shilai. The Yamim going on for a while. Hashem b'Tzvay. Where's the Shilai? North of the base Kale, Mizrach Hashemish, the east side. The Mesila to this road, ha'oil of a base Kale Shchama that goes to base Kale Shchama. We're using a road as a marker to tell you, and all of this is a road. Even though it's a narrow, or how wide is a road? South of Levina. So what is he from here? Yes, if we want to mark off the geography of of a place, we will use even strips. So it happens. We're talking about the east side of that road. Okay, says about it further now. So till now we learned about if you get from we have different opinions for how far away you have to bring it. That's one. What about on a boat? You're on a cruise, you're on a boat in the rivers of Eretz Yisrael, and you rode the get while you're in this ship, this boat. What's that considered? We're talking about now, we understand the rivers of Eretz Yisrael. So you're in Eretz Yisrael, but you're not on the land, you're not on the dry land. How do we treat that? One price we learned, maybe get with Svina. if you bring a get from a ship, no, it's written on the ship, and it can maybe just well, it's in Israeli waters, so therefore it's part of Israel, and the same didn't apply. The Tanya, but another price we learned that like also you have to say for nechtiv. What's going on here? Because the river is not dry land. So it must be a machlekes, but what will explain the machlekes? So right now the Gemara is going to equate, is going to compare the laws of Gittin to the laws of Truma and Maestris. How do we treat this land? And if you tell me you treat the land by Trumas and Maestris, like it's Yisrael, then by Gittin also like Yisrael. If you tell me it's not, it's not. And we have a machlekes. What's going on? We learned in a Mishnah, it says, if you have sand from Chutzlaretz, that's on a ship like Yisrael. And the chiddush is, even though the sand is from Chutzlaretz, but since you're on a boat that's in the river, Israeli waters, the fact is that it's growing now on this ship. No, you know what I mean. Maybe you put soil on the ground there and you're growing things. It could be nuts. It could be even on the ground, on the floor of the ship. And because it's growing here at Yisrael, it's treated like Yisrael, Chaimais, Shmit, and everything else. Omar Rabbi Yehuda, so no, a ship is like I just saw. Omar Rabbi Yehuda, Amasai only when this man shasvin negotiations. If it's resting on the floor, on the riverbed, I will ain hasvin if it's sitting in the water. Then part of the water itself is not Israeli water. If we're not makdish the water, makdish the land. So you're not chayim to a meiser. So we're going to equate now the laws of Gittin to Trumas and Meiser. So it takes a couple of these questions. Ebazei, if you are writing a get, what do you call it? If you write a get upstairs on the second floor of your house, what would the din be then? Because the din is if you bring offer from Chutz La'aretz and you put it on your second floor and you grow things there, you don't have to give terms of mices. Because the sand is a Chutz La'aretz and you didn't put it on the ground. It's on your second floor there. No, so if you write a get, so why is the Gemara say depends which floor you're sitting on when you write the get. If you're downstairs, okay, but if you're upstairs, it's a whole different din. So Tesa says, even though you're upstairs, the fact that you're sitting on top of the land, it's as if you're sitting on top of the land. But here, there's the mamasha mamashas of water, which is a separate entity altogether, that's intercepting, and therefore it's different. That's what I'm saying. It's machlekes. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, that says that no, that's not part of Israel. Then you do have to say, according to Chacham, it's part of Israel. So what's the criteria of Yechayim and Kurmais? Says the Gemara, Amar Abaye said no. Within Rabbi Yehuda itself, I can reconcile the two brises. And how is that? Well, like kosher. If the ship is floating on the water, then you do say before and after because it's not part of Israel. And but the ship is touching the riverbed and it's part of Israel, then you don't say before and after. Rabbi said following that, Otzitz. This is a potted plant. Nokum. Now Rashi says, by the way, that this ship had to be talking about a ship made out of earthenware. Cheres, so therefore you don't need to puncture an otzitz that is cheres, automatically the nutrients come through it. Because remember having more psachim that it's very porous. And Toys Rabbein Tam holds exactly the opposite. That a clay cheres has to have a puncture and the clay doesn't. But anyway, otzitz nokuv hamunach agabi yisedis. Okay, just like you have an argument whether a boat in the water, whether it's considered touching the ground, which the Chacham says as if touching the riverbed, and Rabbi Yehuda says no, unless it's physically. I would say the same thing with a pocket of air. So you have a potted plant standing on pegs on a tripod, and now you have air in between, so a buffer between the two. So it's the same argument. What's in water or air? So is according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not considered part of Israel, and according to Rabban, it is because the air is like water. Amar Rav says the two are totally unrelated. That can go either way in logic. Maybe not so. Like Rabbi Yehuda, you know why Rabbi Yehuda argues by ship is the ship is constantly moving, it's mobile. Therefore, it's not considered sitting on the ground. It's always moving about, and there's water in between. This plant, once you put it down, it remains there. So even though there's a pocket of air, a buffer of air, the fact is that it's going to be there in that place all the time. Maybe then it's considered as part of the ground. So even Rabbi Yehuda might agree that this is considered part of the ground, and you would have to give true mice. I can go the reverse. Inami. I'd kind of come up on Hashem. You know what I'm say by a ship is considered part of the ground. There's no buffer of air. The maya water, just like the ground. It's a substance you can touch. It's tangible. So what's it if it's sand or if it's water? It's all considered part of the land, and therefore maybe water is considered Yisrael. That's why they hold it. But Otz is the mafsik of it, but when you have a buffer of air, that's not something that's substantial. You can touch it. If you like. Says about it further. Now this is the most fascinating thing here. I'm not going to be that you got it all wrong. Who told you these old Bryce that talked about in Israel? Everyone agrees the rivers of Israel is part of Yisrael. When you sanctify Yisrael, you consecrate Yisrael, the rivers were worth it. And look, they're arguing about the Mediterranean. Now this is fascinating where Rabbi Yehuda holds where Israel goes, the boundaries of Israel. Got to look at the map and see. The time you learned, what's considered Eretz Yisrael, what's a Chutz. So you have in the north, you have Mount Hermon. And the question is, or they call him Mount Amnon. The question is, where does it start? Is it the summit, or the apex of the mountain? That's the beginning of Israel, and the slope downwards is Israel. Or is it the foot of the mountain? And the entire mountain is considered Chutz. So it says that it's kosher if the mountain, the slope facing the town Eretz is Yisrael. But it's facing Yisrael. Metudi Amnon from the summit working its way down slope the other way is Chutz La'aretz. Hanosset should be on. What are all the islands in the Mediterranean? So what happens there? We imagine, because Israel protrudes a little bit to the west in the north, a little bit west in the south, and then it goes inwards. So we imagine there's an imaginary line, chut metuach, stretched out, meturi Amnon ad Nachal Mitzrayim, from the very north, to the mountain of Amnon, all the way down to Nachal Mitzrayim, the very south. Big argument where Nachal Mitzrayim exactly is, but all the way down south. Anything on the right and the east side of this imaginary line is Eretz Yisrael. If there are any other youngs that you know. And Menachut Chutz La'aretz. Rashi here, they all talk about, it's a little bit difficult to understand, but Rashi seems to learn there's another opinion that says it's just the land boundary is the boundary, and the Mediterranean, entire Mediterranean is not part of Israel. This line says it is. So the Galilean, all these gas finds and everything else would be part of Israel, possibly. Rabbi Yehuda, now look at Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. He says, no. Instead of making a vertical line, make a horizontal line. The tip of Yisrael all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. He says, the time of trade in Sicily and all these islands got to go through to see what they're all part of Israel. And you call Shekineged Yisrael, anything which is opposite of Yisrael, Hadei Yisrael. Look at that. Anything which is within those two lines, the parallel lines, is part of Israel halachically. Therefore, you don't have to say Shenemar. It says, and he brings a pasuk. Ugvul Yam, the boundary of the Yam. You'll have the Atlantic Ocean, which the Mediterranean is considered Yam Gadol as well because it goes into the Atlantic. The Gvul there repeats it again, and this boundary Gvul and this boundary Yilachem Gvul Yam. I just say it again. And then he said because it includes the entire Mediterranean, what's inside. The Hanosin Shebetz Dodin. What about all of these islands? You go Kapaluya, that's the most northern city on top of the mountain there. You make a straight line there into the Atlantic. And then you go from Nachal Mitzrayim all the way to the Atlantic. And anything between these two parallel lines, that's Yisrael. Amazing. What is the word gvul? The boile nosin. For their chiddush is that imaginary line from north to south, the islands inward. That's what I use gvul, not to tell you that it goes horizontally. Rabbi Yehuda nosin. Is that obvious? So Taisus here brings us an interesting thing here. Look what the name is. Shol Rabbeinu Peter to Rabbeinu Tam. Imagine Rabbeinu Peter. Have you ever heard? Right there. Taisus Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Petter is Peter. Rabbeinu Peter asked Rabbeinu Tam a question. So according to this, if you're living in any of the islands in the Mediterranean, you should have to give meiser and truma. You shouldn't be able to buy any fruits growing in any of these islands there. Maybe even some of the Greek isles. I don't know. If you go look at the map, everything that's included. Maybe, yeah. And that's why they all have these weddings in Cyprus, part of it as well. So the main time answered, the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. End of story. But the question is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, does he believe, he actually believed that everywhere there is considered Yisrael? So one answer is that the oily bubble didn't recapture it. So therefore did not have the Kedusha Shniya, it didn't have the second conquest because it didn't capture these islands. Or he says, there's an argument. Rashi holds it's only the islands. There are opinions that says that Tunisia, that it's a straight line, not just the Mediterranean. A top line, yeah, you can have maybe even Italy. If you look at it, yeah, the southern part of Europe, or Portugal, or Gibraltar, they might all be part of Eretz Yisrael. You have to go all the way through. Yeah, beautiful part of the world. So you have to take a map and draw a map to see where Eretz Yisrael is, and move on. Anyway, fascinating. Have a good day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow in Mitzvah Shem.